Today is July 16th, and the time is 9:10 a.m. We want to welcome you to the Historic Preservation's public hearing. Thank you for coming. And my name is Dominique Cobb. I am the chair of the Historic Preservation, and I would like for all of the commissioners to introduce themselves. Starting with
Is that on? Bruce Gibson. I sit in the architecture chair. Thank you.
Carrie Ann Canch.
Susan Swift, Boggs Design Partners and Boggs Engineering, Planner Chair.
Thank you, commissioners. And also, I would like to introduce our staff. We have our legal, Ms. Pettis, I'm sorry, our legal,
Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office.
and staff.
Alexis Guzman, Historic Preservation.
Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation Specialist.
Heather Mullins, Historic Preservation Specialist.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dennis Fernandez, Architecture Review and Historic Preservation Manager.
Thank you, thank you. We would like to take this time to read the minutes for May 21st, 2014. I'm sorry, 24. Thank you. Commissioners, if we have read, if we can get a motion.
I move to approve the minutes.
I second the motion to approve the minutes for Tuesday, May 21st.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved.
Once again, good morning, Commissioners. Dennis Fernandez, Architecture Review and Historic Preservation Manager. Welcome to this morning's public hearing. Welcome to our applicants and those tuning in over our television station. Did want to begin by just letting you know there is a newsletter in your packets that we're going to be providing monthly. So you guys will probably get two a month. This is our first version of this. We kind of re-energized it recently and reintroduced it, so we hope you enjoy that. That also goes out to anybody who's on our mailing list as well. And did want to welcome you on this day after the 137th day of the birthday of the city of Tampa. This is Archives Week. You have an enclosure in your packets that identifies some of the opportunities to participate in that. So you're welcome to do so, and hopefully you enjoy that and celebrate the city's birthday along with the staff. Next, I would like to introduce our Preservation in Progress installment. This is where we take a moment out of our hearing time to just consider a recent historic preservation project in the city and to understand the context of that project and how it was reviewed within our preservation standards. And Elaine Lund will review the Sulphur Springs Water Tower.
Thank you. Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation staff. We have a presentation this morning regarding the Sulphur Springs Water Tower at 8105 North Florida Avenue. This is one of the city's historic local landmarks. This is the aerial map showing the location of the Sulphur Springs Water Tower. It's off Florida Avenue, just south of Bird Street on the north side of the Hillsborough River and west of Interstate 275. You can see it's part of the overall Sulphur Springs Park, which extends to the across Interstate 275 over to Nebraska Avenue. This is a tighter shot, sort of, showing the Sanborn Company map from 1931 of the Sulphur Springs Water Tower. You can see it there as the circle. It says privately owned drinking water pumping station, not in operation, and there's a pump house shown on the site, which is no longer present. The water tower was built in 1927 for Josiah Richardson, who was a developer who was responsible for making the Sulphur Springs resort area very famous. The tower itself is about 214 feet tall and goes about 45 feet deep into the ground. It's designed in the Gothic style with lancet windows, a crenellated parapet, and ornamented buttresses, which are, of course, down by the ground. And it was designated as a local historic landmark in 1989. Sulphur Springs Park itself was a tourist attraction. It also attracted locals, and there was a streetcar that was ran up all the way up Nebraska Avenue. This is as far north as it went, from downtown Tampa to the Sulphur Springs resort area. The park itself included a swimming pool, an alligator farm, a dance pavilion, and a gazebo, among other attractions. So recently, the city conducted routine maintenance on the Sulphur Springs water tower, and this included cleaning, painting, and caulking, as well as some minor repairs. Routine maintenance is something that does not require a certificate of appropriateness from the Architectural Review Commission to complete. So this work was done in conjunction with the ARC Administrator's Office. The Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, excuse me, are those that are applied to reviewing projects on our local historic landmarks instead of like a particular set of design guidelines like we have for the historic districts. Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation number 2, 6, and 7 applied to this project. Standard number 2 requires that distinctive features, finishes, and construction techniques shall be preserved. Standard 6 requires that deteriorated features be repaired rather than replaced. And Standard 7 requires that chemical treatments such as sandblasting that can cause damage to historic materials should not be used, and that surface cleaning should use the gentlest methods possible. So that's concludes that presentation.
Thank you. It's great I always enjoy seeing these structures that were constructed for the purpose of enticing visitors to our city. Years ago, I think this with its sort of exotic feudal design, a lot of the buildings in that area were designed very exotically to entice tourists to visit the location. Even the Tampa Bay Hotel with its Moorish design and minarets was done to kind of reflect that exotic nature of Florida to visitors that were coming from the north. So it's great to have these structures here and to be able to work on their preservation when the opportunity comes up. And with that, we will next step into our disclosure of conflicts of interest and ex parte communication, and our attorney, Kamaria Pettis-Mack, will lead us in that discussion.
Good morning. Again, Commissioners, Kamaria Pettis-Mack from the Legal Department. Will the Commissioners please state whether or not they have any conflicts of interest regarding any of the items that are on the agenda? None. Thank you.
I do not.
Thank you.
I have none.
Thank you. Furthermore, will the Commissioners please state whether or not they've had any ex parte communications regarding any of the items that are on the agenda?
No, I have none.
None.
Okay,
I
thank
have
you.
none.
Okay, with that, we are now ready for our swearing. Anyone who is going to be providing testimony or public input this morning, if you could please stand and raise your right hand, including staff.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you be providing today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we are ready for our first case this morning, and Heather Bonds will introduce the case. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Can I get the power? Thank you very much. Good morning, Heather Bonds, Historic Preservation Specialist. A National Register of Historic Places update application has been submitted to the state by the owners of the El Circulo Cubano de Tampa, or Cuban Club, at 2010 North 14th Street, also referred to as Avenida de Cuba. As a certified local government, the city is delegated the responsibility to review and comment on the state's Division of Historical Resources nominations. Our code provides that the HPC has the duty to review and advise on the National Register proposals. In this case, it is a revision to an existing National Register of Historic Place property. The Cuban Club was individually listed in the National Register of Historic Places in 1972 and listed as a contributing resource to the Ybor City Historic District in 1974. It is also listed as a contributing resource to the Ybor City Historic District National Historic Landmark from 1990. The proposed amendments are to the National Register individual listing only. The 1972 original nomination form indicated that the site was nominated in the areas of political and social humanitarian for its significance and gave an inaccurate date of 1907. This photo shows the property in 1971 at the time the nomination was drafted. It's a fabulous picture. The purpose of this amendment is to add the following additional areas of significance to the National Register listing. For criteria A, in the areas of ethnic heritage for Cuban, health and medicine, and entertainment and recreation, and for criteria C for architecture. This amendment also corrects the old period of significance, which incorrectly dates the building to 1907, and expands the period of significance from 1917 to 1974, which would be 50 years from this year, to fully encompass the Cuban Club's decades of significance to Ybor City. This amendment also adds the rear courtyard as a contributing structure and the statue of Jose Marti as a contributing object. In the areas of criteria A that are being updated, we're looking at Cuban heritage, health, medicine, and entertainment and recreation. The Cuban Club is a direct descendant of over 40 separate Cuban patriotic clubs, which came into being from 1886 to 1898 to promote the contributing struggle for Cuban independence that had begun in 1868. After those clubs united in 1899, the club transitioned from its political and military roots to focus on the social life of the Cuban community. The club has striven to maintain the Cuban heritage, language, and culture, serving as a meeting place for generations of Cubans and general Tampa Latin community for over 130 years. The club offered entertainment in form of picnics, dances, recreation facilities, and support to Cuban sports teams. Education and medical care was also offered for the Cuban community. The Cuban Club was home to a gymnasium, complete with a plunge pool, a basketball court. The Cuban Club's boxing arena and training complex, which expanded to 2,000 seats in 1925, was the centerpiece of Ybor City's boxing community. The Cuban Club's two-story traditional proscenium neo-Mediterranean revival-style theater was home to concerts, recitals, plays, film screenings, and dance performances, and was also home to the WALT Sunday radio show, the first Spanish-language radio show in Tampa. Here is the basement plan to show the entertainment areas and recreation facilities offered, including the basketball court, bowling alley, mat space, and a plunge pool. The amendment also seeks to add criterion C to the National Registers of Historic Places significance in the area of architecture for the neoclassical revival style. This style was popular between 1900 and 1920 for both public buildings and private homes. It draws inspiration from the classical revival style popular in the 18th and 19th centuries. Neoclassical revival buildings are characterized by symmetry, monumental proportions, masonry construction, large porticos, and both columns and pediments. The Cuban Club is an excellent example of this neoclassical revival style in its size, monumental entry, symmetry, use of rows of windows and French doors, use of pilasters and columns, and a parapet. It has undergone minimal changes in its 100-plus years and retains most of its original design elements on both the exterior and interior. The building is also associated with the prominent regional architect M. Leo Elliott, responsible for designing numerous public buildings in Tampa Bay, including two other Ybor City clubs, both of which are interpretations of the neoclassical revival style. He also designed this building that we're in today. We applaud the Cuban Club as an excellent steward of the property, as it has remained intact with little changes for over 100 years. There are two proposed contributing items being added to the National Register of Historic Places form. This is the statue of Jose Marti on the northeast corner of the lot that the club dedicated in his honor in 1949. It has had little change since. And also the rear courtyard, which is immediately to the rear of the Cuban Club, encompassing the northwest corner of the block. The large concrete courtyard has a decorative terrazzo star in the center. The courtyard is enclosed by a tall concrete block wall on the street side, the north and the west, and a chain link fence to the south side. The interior side of the courtyard walls have evenly spaced classical columns with detailed capitals. Each column is topped with a decorative urn that sits atop the wall. Historically and currently, temporary structures such as concert stages, vendor booths, and the wood boxing ring have been built on this site for outdoor events. The only known alterations to the courtyard are the installation of mechanical equipment and the chain link fence. The concrete and terrazzo showed general signs of weathering, such as cracking and sun-faded colors. Additionally, the updated form corrects the period of significance to the entire site to encompass the year the club building was constructed up to the Cuban Embargo Act, which shuttered Tampa's cigar industry, which cost thousands of Cuban cigar workers their jobs and fundamentally altered the culture of the community, thus causing the club to lose most of its members and changing its role in the community. Staff requests, in accordance with Section 27-255, that the HPC make a motion to support the inclusion of the updated criterion A and C areas of significance, add the statue of Jose Marti as a contributing object, add the courtyard as a contributing structure, and correct the period of significance to 1917 to 1974. We do have a representative from the Cuban Club here to speak, so I'd like to ask Patrick Montero.
There was a condition that the National Park Service gave us, and that was to update the listing. It was done in typewriter, it was old, it had was inaccurate, and so we paid an organization to come in and update the listing, and it went back to the state. The state then forgot about it and did not send it to National Park Service. So a year later, when we went to look for it on the listing, it wasn't there. Called the state. They decided to go ahead and move forward with it. They had to update it again because it now was a year old. And so this is where we're at today. It's certainly a huge improvement. It tells the story a lot better of the Cuban Club, which also helps tell the story of Tampa. And we are also currently happy to report that we're doing about $3.5 million in renovations to the Cuban Club currently. We've just completed about $5 million over the last 7 years, and this last set of money should take the outside of the building back to almost original state. We want to put the lights back on the building. We want to redo the parapet walls back to their original look. We are going to, we currently have permits to finish the windows and doors on the 4th and 3rd floor. We are almost finished with the elevator. And so I think it's going to be a jewel in the City of Tampa's historic properties. And we appreciate all the cooperation from the BLC over the years to make this happen. Your staff here is fantastic. And I really appreciate the job you guys do. I know it's thankless, but I want to thank you for it.
Thank you.
Kamari Pettis-Mackel from the Legal Department. So as staff mentioned on this slide that's before the board, they're asking for a motion. So if it's based upon the information that staff provided to update the listing for the property. So if it's the pleasure of council to make a motion to reflect whatever your findings are regarding the presentation.
Do we make comments or no?
Sure, you can.
Oh,
We are open for discussion before you make a motion.
yes.
Do you have questions of staff?
No.
Okay.
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you for your presentation. I went to the Cuban Club, I think it was last year or the year before, for, I forgot her name, but she's a doctor or something. And she wrote a book about the Cuban experience in Tampa. And it was really cool. And I would just like to see, thank you for your report, just a picture of like the courtyard. I think that would be really nice to see where the terrazzo floor or the mosaic tiles are. But with that said, I would like to make a motion to approve the amendments that you're making to the listing. Staff request in accordance with section 25255, that the HPC make a motion to support the inclusion of the updated criteria A and criteria C, areas of significance, to add this, the statue of Jose Marti as a contributing object, and add the courtyard as a contributing structure, and correct the period of significance from the 1907 to 1917 to 1974.
I'll second.
Those all in favor say aye.
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 All in agreement, we have nominated to move forward with the National Registration of Historic Place nomination for the item 24-00023. I'm sorry, 36 for the Cuban Club. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you, Heather, for the staff report as well.
Thank you. Just prior to moving on, I wanted just to take a moment to thank Mr. Mantega for his tireless effort in preserving the physical and the cultural significance of the Cuban Club. These designations, which you facilitate and which the staff works with, are a great tool for partnerships and preservation, but it takes somebody to do the heavy lifting on these buildings, particularly a building of this magnitude, and Mr. Mantega is an army of one and is really responsible, along with his board, for the preservation of this building. So thank you very much.
And everything else that he does for the community.
Moving on, we will now move to a redesignation of a relocated structure located in the Ybor City Historic District, and Heather will once again present you the facts of this case.
Again, Heather Bonds, Historic Preservation Specialist. Now I'm going to present on a redesignation of 911 East 12th Avenue from non-contributing to contributing in the Ybor City Historic District. 911 East 12th Avenue is located in the Ybor City Historic District. This is how it appears today. It was originally located at 916 East 12th Avenue. The resident was moved to 911 East 12th Avenue, where an existing contributing structure had been demolished due to damage from a fire. It is being considered for a status change because it was relocated within the district and has undergone an appropriate rehabilitation. It was originally constructed circa 1917 in the bungalow style. It has horizontal wood siding, a metal shingle roof, and a pier foundation, all indicative of the district's period of significance, which, with exception to the porch floor and the foundation enclosure, it appears to have been little altered. Considering a change of status is included in the powers and duties of the HPC. When doing so, the HPC shall consider the criteria set forth in the National Register Bulletin 15, which I have included in this presentation. Here shows where it was moved, showing the original Sanborn map. And using the district map, which you can now see I-4 has cut through in the district. You can see it's moved further from the interstate, giving better protection to the site. And it remains in the district following its move. Here's an aerial to further show the move location and the proximity of the highway. The structure is definitely in a better position to be preserved. The lot at 911 East 12th Avenue became an option after a fire damage to the contributing structure that was previously there. Here is the relocated structure on its original site from the Florida Master Site File and a photo from 2012. And after renovations. Following its relocation, the building remains in the historic district. The building meets the criteria of the National Register Bulletin 15 as it still embodies the distinctive characteristics of an architectural style represented throughout Ybor City and continues to convey its historic appearance and integrity to the Ybor City Historic District. The rehabilitation repaired the siding, windows, and roof, and sensitively replaced any historic material with appropriate materials where needed. The structure was painted with colors from the Ybor City color palette, which includes a scheme of light blue, white trim, a gray porch floor, and navy blue accents for the vents, column flutes, and porch trim. National Register 15 provides guidance on how to apply the National Register criteria for evaluation. Criteria consideration B gives specifications for moved properties. That will be that the moved property remains significant under criteria C, which is architecture, must retain enough historic features to convey its architectural values and retain integrity of design, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association. So here you see it still retains its craftsman bungalow style with its low-pitched roof, wide overhangs, a large front porch, and columns on piers. And it retains all of its aspects of integrity. Staff finds that the relocated structure meets the criteria for redesignation from Section 27 to 61B and the guidance set forth in National Register Bulletin 15. Built in 17, it falls within the Ybor City Historic District's period of significance. Here's staff's recommendation. Staff recommends that the approval of the request to redesignate the structure as a contributing structure in the Ybor City Historic District. We have the owner here, if he'd like to briefly acknowledge the redesignation request. Mr. Jerry Alonzo.
Thank you. At this time, commissioners, we would like to, if you'd like to discuss or make a motion, you can go ahead.
I have a question.
Yes.
Was this a property that DOT had control of and then for the acquisition for the interstate?
Good morning, Commissioners. Yes, this particular property fell under a memorandum of agreement between several parties, the City of Tampa being one of them. When these properties were obtained, they were then, portions were relocated, others were offered for relocation privately. And this is the situation for the latter that we're dealing with this morning, although Mr. Alonzo did have control of the property prior to the DOT obtaining it. And he was engaged. His vision was the entire time that he wanted to retain the structure and move it to a new site. I know he considered other sites, but unfortunately, there was a fire that provided an opportunity that we certainly were sorry for the loss of the structure, but it did result in what we're looking at today.
Great, and kudos, thank you for your efforts, thank you.
Yes, Commissioner.
Yes, I have a question for staff. Looking at the Sanborn maps, that doesn't look like the same footprint for this house. I wonder if it might have been moved once before. Had you considered that? And would it make any difference today if that isn't the house that's shown there on the Sanborn map? But the footprint does not look the same.
Speaking with Mr. Alonzo prior to the meeting, he did say there was a portion of the rear that was removed that was used for storage. I'm not sure if that would change that altered footprint that you see on the Sanborn map.
Well, the Sanborn has, it looks like a projection in the front, and the porch doesn't go all the way across. And generally, they're pretty accurate, which I only noticed because I love looking at these things. But would it make any difference, you know, from the legal aspect for the designation, if in fact that's not where it started out at? The footprint on the district map matches the current house, definitely.
Yes. I can look into that. If it was considered contributing at the time of districting, it was at least 50 years old, then we considered it contributing. So the status change that's before you today would not make a difference, I don't believe.
Okay.
I'm sorry, can we get clarity from legal? I want to make sure that your answer is satisfied and it meets with the standards of HPC.
Kamaria Pettis-Mackle from the legal department. So it's up to you to determine whether or not it meets the criteria as to redesignate it as a contributing structure based upon the information that was presenting at the public hearing this morning. If you don't believe that it meets the criteria as a contributing structure, then you have to state your basis for that finding. But it's up to you and the board as a whole to approve a motion on whether or not you think it is a contributing structure to change the status as a contributing structure because it's relocated based upon the information that is presented before you this morning.
Thank you.
Kind of get what they're saying, like, I think the piece was
Can you
removed.
turn your microphone on?
The back was removed before it was designated before. So it was already designated with that off. So nothing, the building didn't change. So it was already approved. So all we're doing is changing the location, but the structure itself is exactly the same from when it was designated before.
And the district map shows it the way it is now. So I think the fact that the prior Sanborn map showed it differently is irrelevant. So I would make a motion to approve this, the request to change the status, if it's appropriate to make a motion. Okay. From non-contributing to contributing.
From contributing.
I'm sorry,
to
from,
contributing.
sorry, I got the wrong one.
And I have the address is
911
911 East 12th Avenue. It should be on your first sample motion.
Yes, I see that now. Yeah, to approve the request to redesignate the structure in the new location for 911 East 12th Avenue from contributing to contributing, because it does meet the criteria in the National Register Bulletin number 15. For which reasons? A, associated with the events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of our history, and C, embodies the distinctive characteristics of the type, period, method of construction, etc.
Is that good?
Is that the basis of your motion?
Yes.
Okay. I second the motion.
Those all in favor? Aye.
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 Those opposed? Seeing none, we move forward with the redesignation to contributing of the relocated structure at 911 East 12th Avenue. Thank you, staff. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Once again, Dennis Fernandez. We are now going to shift over to the Hyde Park Historic District for the next two cases. Both are also requests to change status. So the first case, HPC 2428, is located at 1401 South DeSoto Avenue, and Ms. Lund will present the facts of this case.
Thank you. Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation staff. HPC 24-000028 is located in the Hyde Park Historic District at 1401 South DeSoto Avenue. This is a circa 1922 Craftsman bungalow style building. I'm going to do a quick photo essay here for you, and then we'll have the applicant come forward to present. So the request is for the designation as a contributing structure of this particular building. It has been considered non-contributing all throughout the our local historic district's existence. This application was submitted earlier this year in April. And formerly a residence, this building has been used as part of a restaurant since its inclusion in the planned development for a French restaurant in the early 1990s. It was known as a Le Bordeaux. at that time, has recently been known as the Copperfish Restaurant and is currently in process of becoming a new restaurant and is owned by the H&H Food Services LLC. The powers and duties of the HPC: you do have the powers to review initial designations of contributing statuses and change in status applications when requested to do so. And this particular application for an initial designation of contributing status within a local historic district is to be reviewed by you using the criteria found in National Register Bulletin 15. This is the location of the subject property. It's again in the Hyde Park Historic District. The Hyde Park Historic District has a period of significance from 1886 to 1933. And you can see in the inset picture to the right, on the right side of the screen there, that this building, it's located at it's the one at the corner of DeSoto Avenue and Hills Avenue there. It's sort of,
One- Yes, I make a motion to move for 5, do I have to do a motion? Recess for 5 minutes. I'm sorry, we lost form for a moment.
Don't worry about it.
to continue the photo essay presentation for this property at 1401 South DeSoto Avenue. Again, at the southeast corner of the DeSoto Avenue and Hills Avenue. This is the 1925 Sanborn map showing the subject property. It was the first map that this building appears on, or the earliest Sanborn map that this building appears on. The structure does retain the same footprint, including the projecting bay on the front with the incised front porch. And this is the present-day aerial map of the site. You can see the entire property parcel there outlined in red. And the subject building is just the bit at the corner there. This is the front of the subject property. You can see that it retains the Craftsman bungalow form, including the wide overhangs, the grouped windows. This is looking at its north side. And another angle of the north side there, you can see how it's attached to the restaurant building at its rear. And a view, this picture's actually a couple years older, but this view is looking at the south side of the building. So you can see the stairs that go up to the second story along the this elevation. And at this time, I'd like the applicant to come forward and present.
Good morning, Commissioners. Alex Shaler. I'm with the law firm of Gardner Brewer Hudson. We are located at 400 North Ashley Drive. I am here on behalf of the property owner. As Elaine mentioned, it's H&H Food Services. I won't duplicate this information that Elaine showed about the location. Just did want to note that it does share a folio with the Old Copperfish restaurant, and I'll get into a bit more detail on that in just a second. The request that we have before you this morning is a change in status from non-contributing to contributing. And I want to give a bit of a background about this. It's a little bit lengthy, but I'll try to summarize it quickly. So there have been a number of developers that have pursued redevelopment on this site, specifically as it relates to the restaurant. As you can see in the aerial, it is adjacent here, the restaurant portion, to single-family homes. And so there's been sensitivity about redevelopment of this site since it started. And so whenever we met with the current property owner, H&H Food Services, they had very early on discussions with the neighborhood about the proposed redevelopment of the restaurant. Through those conversations, it became clear very early on that the neighborhood really, really cared about the preservation of the single-family home located at the corner. That was never proposed to be part of the restaurant. To be transparent, the restaurant owners live in Orlando, so they plan to use that as a second home when they're here during the week to run the restaurant. But as I mentioned, the preservation of that structure was important to the neighborhood. We committed to preserve that, but taking that a step further, should the ownership transfer in the future, we wanted to have that safeguard on that building for the neighborhood that this would be a contributing structure. So that's kind of the background here. We went to the ARC for our certificate of appropriateness on the restaurant. One of the applicant proposed conditions we had them include in the motion was that we would pursue this change in status for the single family home from non-contributing to contributing. So this is just to say that this concept of changing the status of this house was included in very early planning discussions, and it was something that we had always planned to do with the new property owner. A little bit of a summary here. We feel that there's an abundance of justification. I'll try not to repeat some of the same items that Elaine mentioned, but we do believe that this should be a contributing structure in the district. Again, the neighborhood feels very similarly. As Elaine mentioned, the original site, the setting, and the original footprint, as shown on the Sanborn map, those are all still intact. The windows and the siding has been modified from the original structure. However, the other original characteristics remain intact today. This is a Craftsman bungalow design, as mentioned. That is an architectural style that is very prevalent in the Hyde Park Historic District, as you all are aware. And we do believe, as I mentioned, that this does contribute to the integrity of the district. I'm going to run through some of these criteria in the National Register Bulletin. The first being, we need to define the essential physical features that must be present for the property to represent the significance. It does note in criteria C that if a property has lost some of the original historic materials, as I mentioned specifically in this case, the original windows and the original siding, that means that it can still be eligible as long as it retains the majority of the features, that illustrated style. We believe that that's the case with this property here. As you can see, Elaine mentioned this as well, but you've got these overhangs across gabled roof, the groupings of the windows, specifically on the left side with the 3 windows juxtaposed together, the wide interior window trim, the porch, the stoop, the chimney located on the side facade. Those are all characteristics that you see not only in the district, but specifically on South DeSoto as well. And so again, that we do believe, as I mentioned, these are visible characteristics that somebody could see if you're walking by the site here. In comparison, as I mentioned, to other homes, not only in the district, but specifically along South DeSoto, I've clipped some other images of houses on the street. This is on the same side of the street as the subject property further south. This is a contributing structure, 1501. Again, you can see very similarly those groupings of windows, the wide wood interior trim, the overhang of the roof. This is directly across the street. As you can see, this one's been modernized a bit, but this is directly across the street from the subject site. Wanted to note here that chimney that you can see along the side facade, that's a prevalent architectural feature of the bungalow. Again, these cross-gabled roofs as well, and then the porch too. And so we believe that, another assessment of the integrity is running through these aspects and determining which are vital to the property. We believe that all of these are applicable to this property. The first being the location. It's obviously located within the Hyde Park Historic District. The design, the Craftsman bungalow design that's seen throughout the district. The original setting is intact. As I mentioned, some of the materials have been altered, but a majority remain the same. We believe that the workmanship is visible through the characteristics, and then the overall feeling. And I think it's important to note that, as I mentioned, this is located on the corner of South DeSoto Avenue. So, I mean, if you're looking at it visually, this is a cornerstone of that street. And we think it's very, very important that, in keeping with the facade of South DeSoto Avenue, that this home becomes protected. And staff has recommended approval of this request, and I am happy to answer questions. Saul Fleischman, our project architect, is here as well, should you have any technical questions too. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, at this time, you have any questions for staff or for the presenters?
I have a question.
Excuse me, Chair, we do have a brief staff report to follow up the applicant's presentation, just to let you know how we arrived at our findings, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Okay, so as the applicant presented, this is, and as I stated previously, this is a Craftsman bungalow style structure. There's a low pitched roof, wide overhangs, outriggers, and the grouped windows.
Hold on, Elaine, we're not able to see your
presentation?
They're not able to see your
Okay.
presentation on the monitor. There you go.
Thank you.
There have been some minor alterations to the building. We included the text from National Register Bulletin 15, how to define, or rather how to evaluate the integrity of a property in the staff report on pages 2, 3, and 4. If you read the section under number 2 at the bottom of page 3, it talks about non-historic materials. And the National Register Bulletin states that if the historic exterior building material is covered by non-historic materials such as modern siding, the property can still be eligible if the significant form, features, and detailing are not obscured. Staff finds that the alterations to this building do include the exterior materials, which include aluminum siding, aluminum soffit and fascia, and the replacement of the historic windows. However, we do find that the original form of the building is present, and we find that it does meet the aspects of integrity that are required in addition to meeting the particular designation criteria. Staff finds that this application meets the criteria of section 261 and that the application was complete. Just to review on why this particular historic district is significant. The historic period of significance is 1886 to 1933. This building was built in 1922, so it falls within the period of significance. The Hyde Park District National Register of Historic Places report used criteria B and C, in the areas of architecture, community planning, development, and settlement, as its areas of significance for National Register designation. In the 1988 Hyde Park Historic District Local Designation Report, this period of significance stayed the same, 1886 to 1933. And the district was found to be a geographically definable area possessing a significant concentration of buildings that are well-designed, and that its character as an established and geographically definable neighborhood was united by cultural, architectural styles, or physical development. This building does sit in the midst of the historic district. It is part of the pattern and the historic material that you find in the houses along the residential streets of the district, and represents a type of architecture that is found throughout the district and maintains its relationship to the site and setting. Therefore, the staff recommendation is the approval of the request to change the status of the Hyde Park building, Hyde Park Historic District building, to contributing, and to amend the Hyde Park Historic District building inventory to reflect this status. And with that, I'm available if you have questions. Thank you.
Yes, now the questions and discussion is open for commissioners.
Yes, hi. I'm a little bit confused on something that was said to us from the representative of the owner about the ARC already having seen this project.
Sure.
Just the order of from ARC to HPC is a little confusing to me.
Yeah, I can summarize that, and then Dennis obviously
What
jump in
has
if you
the
want
ARC
to.
approved?
Yeah, so the ARC issued a certificate of appropriateness for the new construction of the restaurant building only, so for that Copperfish building.
And perhaps this is a question for legal. Do we have the opportunity, or are we entitled to the opportunity to see that?
The legal department, that's not what's before you on this agenda. It's only for the designation of a
Well, I was
changing the
wondering
status.
if it is approval to alter part of what's existing.
That's not before you. That's the role of the ARC to approve or deny a certificate of appropriateness.
But it seems that if we were to approve the change of status, but there's already design plans to alter the existing building, don't they run a little counter to each other?
Commissioner, just to clarify, what's before you is the building envelope of the residential building and not the restaurant. That's a separate application. That's why it went to the ARC, and that's the only parameters in which the ARC considered that application.
Well, the restaurant is outside the boundary of the historic district, so it must have something to do with the historic structure, but I see Dennis wants to talk.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dennis Fernandez, Architecture Review, Historic Preservation Manager. Just for clarification, the entire parcel, including the residence and the restaurant, are within the Hyde Park Historic District. So structures within the historic district, whether they're contributing or non-contributing, will go before a review process, either administratively or through the commission itself. In this particular case, this property has come through a number of times before the Architecture Review Commission. The most recent review was for a rezoning recommendations, because there is a PD development that's placed on this property. In the original PD, the two structures were somewhat merged, the restaurant structure and the residential structure. However, in the new redevelopment, they're not merged any longer. It's gonna be a separate building where the restaurant is, and it's gonna be a separate building where the residence is. So the residence is, for all purposes, is being looked at on its own, although it's under common ownership to the restaurant. So I would, recommend that this be looked at as an independent application from the restaurant. The restaurant, I believe it's going to happen because there's a lot of professionals here, but there's no guarantee it's going to happen at this point. But the building's protection is what is the issue for this morning. So just I want to further kind of layer that. in that, you know, the sequence is correct. They had the option of coming perhaps to the HPC before, but I doubt until they got their entitlements and their approval on what their business plan entailed, that they were going to, you know, somewhat constrict the development of the site, because they had the ability to actually tear the structure down. And so as you heard from the testimony this morning, staff, along with the neighborhood, had encouraged the developer to consider the redesignation of this property to further reinforce the integrity of the Hyde Park Historic District. And a lot of the changes and details that were being presented with you about the changes to the building are very common attributes to older historic buildings in the Hyde Park District when it was established in the 80s. This one hasn't really evolved over time, but I can tell you I've worked on, you know, probably hundreds of this type of structure that was encapsulated with aluminum siding, that had the windows changed and had sort of, you know, exterior renovations done over the year. And we work, you know, all the time to bring these structures back to their historic appearance. So I hope that helps you. I'm happy to answer any more questions process-wise that you might have.
And Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation Staff, if I may add, I think I heard this as part of the commissioner's question as well, that the Hyde Park Historic District maps, the boundary lines for the national district and the local district are not exactly the same. So I believe you saw on the map that it looked like the restaurant building is outside of the district boundary. It is in fact outside of the national district boundary, but it is within the local district boundary. So that is why the ARC had that review authority.
If I could just ask Dennis one more question then, or actually, no, I'm not sure. Somebody said that, so where it is currently in the photograph shown joined to the restaurant building, what has been proposed outside of this venue will separate them again? Is that correct?
That's correct. The building historically as a component of the restaurant, I believe it had been used as some type of office space for the administration of the restaurant. That's not occurring any longer.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to see in the photograph of the north side, but it looks like something joins up to the back of it, but the bushes are
Someone might be
hiding
able to
it.
speak to that a bit better, but I believe that they're just very, very, very close with a covered walkway / carport
Yeah, okay.
that's almost touching the house, but I do not believe that they're connected, so I'll let you speak to that.
Saul Fleischman Jr., Fleischman Garcia, Maslowski Architects, 324 Hyde Park Avenue. The buildings are not connected. There's approximately 10 feet separation. It's overgrown right now with landscaping. It's kind of hard to see. And the intent is not to ever connect them. I say that there may be a covered walkway at some point, but it's not going to be connected with air-conditioned space. The residence will remain as primarily a residence, and the new restaurant is in the construction document stage right now.
Okay. I mean, I ask because that's the weakest part, I think, of the request is that it sort of looks like in the photographs that it's joined on to something else, which does affect the exterior massing and perception of the massing. So, okay, thank you all.
You're welcome.
And also, commissioners, if you can take a look at the report and look at the north elevation on page 10, it shows distinctly that there is a carport separating. So just for your consideration and provided by the staff, it does show a clear picture of the structure and also the separation.
So I have a question for, I think it's Dennis. So what it looks like to me is that Howard is more commercial, and then DeSoto is residential. And so I could see why the neighbors or the neighborhood would want that if it's on the corner lot to be residential, because if it was commercial, it'll ruin the corner. Yeah, so I think it's good.
It's a challenging area because there's a park across the street on one side, there's residential to one side, and then commercial and developing, emerging commercial on top of that. So that's one reason why this property hasn't redeveloped along with some of the momentum that you see around it, is because it's just a challenging interface between the commercial and the residential. So this provides the buffer for the neighborhood that has concerned them, as well as maintaining that DeSoto Avenue street perspective, and then allows for the redevelopment to occur more focused on Howard Avenue.
Do you know why it wasn't contributing before? Is it because of maybe the prior owner didn't want it to be contributing?
You know, this was all done in the 80s, and I think that, you know, my suspicion is that because it was already sort of in the plan of the restaurant, it was not looked at maybe being significant enough to stand on its own as a contributing structure, because they would have had to do probably part contributing, part non-contributing to the site, and that was, you know, probably not something that they felt was appropriate. But now with the structure being sort of 40 years older, and we see the amount of development pressure in the area that kind of warrants the protective measure, we have sort of a different, you know, perspective on this.
Thank you.
At the time, commissioners, is there any more discussion? If not, may I have a motion?
I'm gonna make a motion. I always have a hard time. Okay, so I make a motion I make a motion to approve the request to change the status of the property located at 1401 South DeSoto Avenue from non-contributing to contributing, because the application does meet the criteria established in the National Register Bulletin number 15 for the following reasons. A, the property is associated with events that have made significant contribution to the broad patterns of history, meaning the period of development when it was developed in that time. And then C, the property embodies the distinctive characteristics of the type, period, and method of construction, or represents the work of a master, or possesses high artistic values, or represents a significant and distinguishable entity whose components lack individual distinction. And this is based because it's craftsman style and it still maintains its original structure and roof line, and overall, you know, aside from the changes that were made to it, it still has good integrity. Is that good? Anyone want a second?
Oh, second.
Those all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, we move forward with changing the status from non-contributing to, excuse me, contributing for the property at 1401 East DeSoto Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Moving on to our final case for this morning. Another property located in the Hyde Park Historic District. This request is to change the status from contributing to non-contributing. It is a property located at 819 South Orleans Avenue, a residential property. And Elaine will once again lead us in the review of that in preparation for the applicant's presentation.
Thank you. Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation Staff. As Mr. Fernandez stated, this application is to change the status from contributing to non-contributing for the property at 819 South Orleans Avenue in the Hyde Park Historic District. Item HPC 24-000030. This application was received earlier this year in May, and the house that we are looking at this morning is located on the west side of Orleans Avenue between Inman and Morrison Avenues. It was documented as constructed in 1915 and has been considered contributing to the Hyde Park Historic District since its inception. Again, this board does have the power to review designations of contributing status and change in status when requested to do so by the applicant. The criteria of review for the application is to be applied by the HPC as National Register Bulletin 15 again. This is the location map of the historic district. You can see the National Historic District boundary line in blue and the local historic district boundary line in red. This particular site's located pretty much firmly within the center of the historic district. You can see on the district map there that it is shaded in gray, which indicates that it is contributing, and that there is a non-shaded in, non-contributing structure in the rear of the property. This is the 1915 map, Sanborn map, showing a wood frame, a single-story wood frame building in the district. This is the earliest Sanborn map in which a building appears at this site. At that time, it had 2 accessory structures in the rear. This is the front, or the east elevation of the subject property. And you can see now that it is a 2-story wood frame house with a gabled roof. It has an irregular plan. There's a 1-story bay that projects on the south end of this asymmetrical east facade. This is the south side of the subject site. You can see the chimney there, and the 2nd-story addition, and the porch on that side that is also an addition. This is looking at the north side of the building, the picture on the left from the front, the picture on the right from the rear. You can see the replacement windows in the building, as well as that 2nd-story addition. And this is the rear of the structure, or the west side. And then this is the 2-story accessory structure, which was built in 2009, was designed with details to match the primary structure. And with that, I'll ask the applicant to come forward for their presentation, and then I'll follow that with my staff report.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Tyler Hudson. I'm a partner with the law firm Gardner Brewer Hudson, and my address is 400 North Ashley Drive. So we have a quick PowerPoint. Before I get started, just to introduce some of the members of the project team that are here. My colleague Alex Shaler is here, as well as Joe Moreta with my team. Kim Clement is also here. She's an architect who worked on this project. She'll be speaking in the second portion of our presentation. Thanks, Alex. So just to reorient, as Elaine said, this is really smack dab in the middle of the local Hyde Park Historic District on Orleans, between Morrison and Inman. It's on the west side of Orleans. So we're seeking this change in designation for 2 really related reasons. The home in its current form has no essential physical characteristics from the original construction, and it bears no resemblance at all to what was constructed. We think it was actually 1917. That's wrong on screen. We think it was constructed actually as early as 1913, based on the Polk Directory. Someone was living at a structure there in 1913, but as Elaine alluded to, it first showed up on the Sanborn map in 1915. And again, the second related reason is that it bears no relation to the original construction, because there has been such extensive renovation over the years that it's really denuded any historical integrity that the site originally had, and that we know it originally had based on some pictures. So again, we saw the Sanborn map, and just to note a couple things. You have the exterior structures. You notice that the east and the southern fronts of the house are characterized by an enclosed porch, which is common to the era. There's also a little bit of a kind of a bump out there at the southwest corner. I might flip between this and a couple slides ahead when I get there, just to show the difference between this 1915 Sanborn map and what showed up in 1951, which was after the period of significance. So what's really unusual about this situation, and I would note, I have the privilege of appearing before the ARC a little bit more often. This is the first designation application I've ever filed. I think these are not really to be filed very lightly, but there's such an overwhelming amount of evidence in this case that my firm took it on. What you're seeing on screen is some of that evidence. The property owner brought in a very large, it's a suit box full of notes and pictures and things that prior owners had left, including a note that was from someone who had photos from the 1930s who used to live there. You can actually see the handwritten note from Ms. Ford on screen. What you see on screen, it does bear resemblance to the 1915 Sanborn map. So these were pictures from 1937, 1940. So there is no question that at one point there was a contributing structure on this land. That's not at all what's in dispute today. You can see the exterior porch very clearly. This is consistent from what we can tell with what was depicted on that Sanborn map. We know that in 1937, Dr. Forbett obtained remodeling permits for $2,600, which went a bit farther in 1937 than it does today. And so that's our first indicator that there was a very significant remodeling at that point. What we know about that remodeled home, porch, gone. Footprint changed, and therefore the foundations supporting that new footprint were changed. Whereas the original, what we have for those pictures, again, I showed you from like the late 1930s, where that showed projecting rafters, eaves, things like that. Those are gone. And one thing that is unusual, there's almost two fronts to, and that still persists to this day. There is sort of a front dish door on the eastern side, which fronts Orleans, but there's also this bay that Elaine mentioned with symmetric columns that is on the southern side. That's almost like a second front door. So again, not at all consistent with what was depicted on the 1915 Sanborn. So by 1951, the Sanborn map you can see here, that looks pretty different. And again, I should have done sort of a crosshatch of the two, but whereas this, you can see it's, I don't know, my kids would probably say it looks like a top hat or something like that. That's what existed in 1951. If we go back, that's what existed in 1915. So fundamental material changes to the footprint and as well as some of the exterior features as well. Here you can see in 1953, there's an article that actually mentions, it's in the context about a drought, but it talks a lot about what major renovations it went through. And you can see from the sort of blueprint drawings, this looks very different than those 1937 photos that we showed. That's not the end of it. 1993, the ARC approved some further extensive alterations, which included the addition of a second story. That's where we got this sort of second southerly front door elevation that still persists today. The chimney is moved. The siding is totally replaced. It's completely resided with the horizontal siding you see there today. And so what we have now, Lovely Home bears absolutely no resemblance to what was constructed during the period of significance. We have two expert reports that are in the record from two architects, Timothy Hayes and Kim Clement. Kim will be speaking briefly. Timothy Hayes is based in Richmond. He completed a visit to the site, even got in the crawl space, and noted that there were clearly abandoned foundations that corresponded to that 1915 Sanborn, but which are obviously they're abandoned. They're not supporting the structure that's there today. Again, repeating the same through line that runs through the entire application. There were no doubt contributing elements at a point, but all of those contributing elements are now gone. And it's for a street that's covered with contributing structures, which we have no reason to challenge any of those. The house stands out. It looks anachronistic relative to what's on the 800 block of Orleans. Mr. Hayes noted the lack of eaves and projecting rafters, like what a departure that is. The porch changing. I'll say that Mr. Hayes' conclusion went even a little bit farther than Ms. Clement, who will speak briefly, and the conclusion that staff had. I think their shared conclusion is that this structure was, it's so fundamentally altered that it bears no resemblance at all to what was constructed during the period of significance. Mr. Hayes believes that it actually is a totally new structure. We can't quite prove that. That's not really relevant to the determination, but I just did want to flag that. And with that, I'd ask that Kim come up and talk a little bit about some of her observations of the site. Thanks. You want to advance the slide forward?
Yes.
Okay.
Kim Clement, Clement Foss Architects, 2709 South McDill Avenue. When I was brought into this project, I think I looked at it from a little bit more forensic point of view. The original photographs that were shown, which is just a modest frame vernacular home, I wanted to tie that. There was no 918 like next to the front door, so how do I tie that to that piece of property? And in looking at the photographs and the evidence presented, clearly the Sanborn map, the distinctive front porch that turns into a screen porch that wraps around to the south side correlates with that original Sanborn map. And also just the original retaining, I'm just looking for any clues that tie the two together, the photographs and the 918 address. And the original front retaining wall that is still there is the same as you see in the original photographs. So, I'm just looking for any remnants of what was there. In 1937, to go to the permits that were recorded for $2,600, I did just a little bit of an additional research just to qualify that $2,600. And most of the re-roofs or the repairs were all like $150, $200, $50. I found two, and the descriptions are very brief, but I found two new houses. One new build was $2,000 and one new build was $2,950. So the $2,600 budget that was recorded in 1937, I think should go a far way towards either a new structure or a very extensive remodel. The things that I might have looked at were, just in looking for any remnants, again, back to the original front retaining wall and possibly the brick lattice weave, although I now think that that might even not be correct. The renderings shown at the 1993 ARC hearing are consistent with the 1950s Sanborn map, which is a different footprint. And one thing I'd like to show on the Elmo, if we can switch to that for a second. Here is the front of the house right here facing Orleans. And different from the original photographs, you see a fireplace element on the south side that is consistent with the photographs from the 50s. And you see the perimeter, which is much different. This portion right here may have been an addition at some point, undocumented. And further, in talking about the remnants of the foundations, if you look at this south side and that same chimney right there that you just looked at, you see a series of piers just inboard that I think may have been the original house. There would be, such a strange event to have piers 2 feet apart between the original exterior and then the new exterior. And then the same thing along the north side where you see a series of piers here and the piers that are along the north side, which are just slightly out. So just from a forensic point of view, I think that it alludes to that there might have been some cover-up, but it's basically a new home that was built in 1937, 1938. Also the style, I think I would describe the original photographs as frame vernacular, and the photographs and evidence of drawings and photographs of the 40s house on is more of a colonial revival. I think staff actually had Georgian elements of trim in it, which are clear. So I do think that if there were any remnants, they were inboard of what the exterior that was remodeled in 1993 was. And I just don't feel like there is any, if the definition of a contributing structure retains its original architectural elements, I think we shifted from one house to a new house that was called contributing, but when you look back at the evidence, I believe that there is really no visible evidence of any of the original structure. There's no original siding, windows, roof line, trim. That all got taken care of in 1993 at the ARC hearing, but that's not even really the subject that matter. I think the switch from the original 1917 to the 1937 was what changed the status of it. I think that's it. Anything else?
That's perfect, thank you. Thanks, Kim. That's really about all we have for our presentation. But before Elaine gives her piece, I just want to thank Dennis and Elaine for their help on this. They came out to the site. We've done a lot of site visits. We really did our homework on the site. We let Neighborhood Association leadership know, this is a historic district that includes two neighborhoods, HHPI and HHPNA. I spoke with Mary Lou Bailey in HHPNA, which I believe this structure is in. The one you just heard is in the other one. And gave them the written reports, and we're not aware of any opposition. And typically, I would not ask commissioners to draw inferences from a lack of people in the room, but that this is a district that vigorously protects the historic integrity of its neighborhood. And so I think the fact that we're here being unaware of any opposition and having staff support speaks to the resources that the property owner was willing to devote to making sure we got this right. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I appreciate your time and your patience. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation staff. Going back to the staff presentation and staff report, I showed you already the 1915 Sanborn map of the subject property, subject site. This is the 1925 to 1929 Sanborn map, if we can get that up on the screens. Okay. So this shows the same footprint that you saw on the 1915 Sanborn map. And then again, in 1931, it shows the same footprint with the little bump out on the southwest side and the wraparound porch on the south and east sides. 1951, as Tyler showed you, the footprint changes. Here we see what appears to be a similar bump out on the southwest side, but now we no longer see the wraparound porch, and there's the protruding bay on the east facade. And the 1976 Sanborn map appears the same as the 1951 Sanborn map. Looking again at the differences here we see between the 1931 and the 1951 Sanborn maps. This is the 1931 Sanborn map in color. And then when we overlay the 1951 Sanborn map on top of that, you can see how the footprint of the building on the site changed at that point in time. Again, 1931, and then overlaying 1951. You can see how the building was expanded on most sides. If the and you can see that there's no front porch on the 1951 map. That is completely gone. The 1996 evidence that was provided to the prior owner of the property, I'm going to read this just into the record for you. It says the name and address at the top of the letter here reads Nancy Torbett Ford, 2937 Bayshore Court, Tampa, Florida, 33611-2807. And the content of the letter reads, "Hi, sorry I don't know your name. And going through some old pictures, I found this one of your house circa 1937 to 40. It must have been like this when it was the Morrison Grove caretaker's house. I lived there from about 1936 until I married in 1950. My parents, Dr. and Mrs. Ralph S. Torbett, remodeled it. No one restored in those days, unfortunately. Thought you might like to see it, and it's signed Nancy Ford, and then dated September 1st, 1996. So this is one of the photographs that was provided by Ms. Ford, along with the newspaper clipping showing the building permit that was referenced by the applicant, and you can see that it's for the remodel of the property at 819 Orleans. Again, the photograph that was in the paper in 1953 showing the bump out that's present today on the front of the house, and no front porch. You can see the door facing, no longer facing the front or facing the street, but facing to the north. And the 1985 picture from the Historic Resources Survey of the Hyde Park Historic District. Unfortunately, we don't have a clearer picture of that, but again, you can see this is the north and the east side of the building with the bump out on that east facade and the door on it facing to the north. You can see the trim around the windows, and which is and the low overhang, which are indicative of the colonial revival style that's present on the house today. This is the survey map from the Hyde Park Historic District Inventory from 1985. The building here is shown in yellow, which indicates that it was considered at that time contributing altered. The contributing altered designation was given to buildings that were considered to have remedial alterations, and they were considered certifiable as contributing to the district for the purposes of the Federal Historic Preservation Tax Credit Program. When the map was adopted as part of the local designation ordinance for the local Hyde Park Historic District, the building was shown as contributing. So it's always been considered contributing to the local Hyde Park Historic District. These are the elevations again that were shown by Ms. Clement. You can see what was proposed at that time, whereas the second story addition, the porches on the front elevation and the south elevation, the replacement of the siding, and the proposal to match the trim throughout with what was existing at that time. And the house retains the appearance that it had from the 1991 approval today. This is the north side in elevation, and the north side, I'm sorry, the south side, there we are, with the porch, and the south side with the porch and the chimney. The north side of the property, and the north side again, and then the rear elevation, and the photo of the rear from today. Showing you some of the details of the house. There are two what look to be historic original or perhaps original remaining windows on the building. The majority of the windows throughout are replacement windows, as seen in the picture on the right. You can also note that the trim is different on the windows that were historic. It's different than the windows that were on the windows that were replaced. The building exhibits different foundation piers throughout and different foundation patterns. You can see these three examples of what was visible throughout, the different textures and forms of the brick piers and the infill. So going through National Register Bulletin 15, it provides us with information about how to assess the integrity in historic properties and how to consider whether they are contributing to historic districts. The 7 aspects of integrity are listed, as well as the 4 steps in assessing integrity in properties. The first step in that discussion on the property integrity is defining the essential physical features and determining why the property is significant. If it's significant for its association with significant persons or events, those will be criteria A or B, then the property has to retain its essential physical features from the period it was associated with the person or event. If it's considered significant under criterion C, then we have to consider whether the property retains the essential physical features of its architectural style or construction technique. In historic districts, the National Register Bulletin states that a component cannot be considered contributing if it has been substantially altered since the district's period of significance, or if it does not share the historic associations of the district. Visibility of physical features. This goes to what we were looking at in the prior application. The retained essential physical features must be visible enough to convey the property's significance. Modern materials should not obscure the property's form, features, or detailing. And if those original essential physical features are entirely obscured, the bulletin states that the property cannot meet the criteria for listing, and that it cannot contribute to a historic district. When comparing similar properties, this may be necessary when the significance of the historic context is not well-defined. In this case, the context is very well-defined as the building is part of the Hyde Park Historic District and can be compared to many properties within the district that were built within the historic era. So when you determine the relevant aspects of integrity, you have to look at how the aspects of integrity relay the property's significance. If a building is significant for a historic association with a person or event, basically the question is, does the property appear as it did during the time of its historic association with the person or event? If you're considering it to be contributing under criterion C for its architectural form, then you have to ask if the property retains the essential physical features of the architectural style that it had during the period of significance. Staff found that there is some evidence that indicates that the building was built during the Hyde Park historic period of significance. It was identified in the initial 1985 nomination for the National Register listed Hyde Park Historic District. And it was, it is likely that the building was comprehensively remodeled with subsequent major additions and alterations. The major alterations have negatively impacted the building's historic integrity in several aspects. Location and setting remain intact as it is still within the district. However, its original design, workmanship, materials, feeling, and association have been compromised. Staff finds that the building does not meet the criteria found in National Register Bulletin 15 as a historic resource that contributes to the character and integrity of the district. The cumulative alterations to 819 South Orleans Avenue are extensive enough that no original character defining details or essential physical features are intact, and that to return this building to its original appearance would require the restoration of the entire building envelope, which cannot be considered remedial and would entail conjecture that may not be consistent with the original design. And therefore, staff does not object to the change in status, the requested change in status, and recommends approval of the request to change it to non-contributing. And with that, I'm available if you have questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, open to discuss?
Sure. I would just say.
I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
Commissioner
Oh,
was before you.
Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Oh, sorry. Elaine, can you move, go back like 4 pages? The next one, like ahead. Go back, or there, this one, right here. That's all I wanted to see this slide. Okay, thank you.
Was there any discussion for this?
I'd just like to say it's unfortunate that we no longer see the 1915 house. The historical research that's been done is quite thorough, and I appreciate that. And it's unfortunate in a way that we don't have that kind of endeavor on every house, but it's not practical, and it's also amazing how quickly the history disappears, actually, the record. I think as presented, the history is quite compelling for your case. Thank you.
All right, seeing no further discussion. I'm
I
sorry.
just have a question. Is Ms. Clements' report or opinion in writing in the record somewhere?
Good morning, Tyler Hudson for the record. Yes, ma'am, it's in the Acela record.
Thank you.
Along with the report of Mr. Hayes, the other architect.
Thank you.
Okay, so I do have a question. It's more, Elaine, to do with the 1985, the report. When it was noted as contributing but altered, I guess I need some clarification. So the period of significance is 1886 to 1933. And then it looks like a lot of the alterations and remodels were done in 1937 onward. So I'm trying to get into the head of the staff before in 1985. So were they considering those alterations historic because they were over 50 years old?
Our understanding is that this information had not come to light in 1985. So, you know, if they had the information available about the alterations, you know, they may have made a different assessment in 1985.
Okay, so they probably were like, because there was a lot of Greek revival and that colonial style, so they're probably associating with that period versus like the simple farm style that it was originally done in. I'm assuming.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, after discussion, do we have a motion?
I would like to make a motion, and if I'm correct, I read, we have like actually a sample here, is that?
That is correct.
That correct? Okay. I move to approve the request to change the status of the property located at 819 South Orleans Avenue from contributing to non-contributing, because the application does not meet?
Yeah, it does not.
Oh, the criteria established in the National Register Bulletin number 15 for the following reasons. Shall I read all the reasons?
You can read your own.
That, yeah, because that is contributing. Those are contributing.
If those are just the criteria, we can state why we don't believe it meets the criteria.
Well, the historic record is quite compelling that the current condition of the house is outside the period of significance. Do I need to say any more than that? I think
No.
that's pretty compelling. Thank you.
Anyone, second motion?
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Unanimously, we will move forward with request to change the status from contributing to non-contributing for the 819 South New Orleans Avenue structure. Thank you, staff.
Point of clarification, Commissioner Canch, on returning, Kamaria Pettis-Malka for the record, returning to HPC 2428, can you please confirm the address that you made your motion for?
Yes.
Right here.
Oh, so it's, thank you. So it's HBC 24-28, and the address is 1401 South DeSoto Avenue.
Thank you.
All right. All right, at this time, is there any new business from the staff, or, I'm sorry, from commissioners?
I would just thank the staff and the applicant, a lot of thorough, thoughtful work on that last one. It's much appreciated. It was a difficult case.
I agree. I think that the evidence came after the fact, probably made it difficult to remove it, but it was a wise decision.
And also, just wanted to go back to the beginning of the meeting with the preservation in progress. I really appreciate the work that is being done by staff, especially the water tower. For me, it's a bit of significance because at that water tower, that was a place for the African-American community to have a drive-in theater during the 80s. And to see that there has been a focus on that area, because Sulphur Springs is still highly populated by the African-American community that, you know, brought in those tourists during the 30s. So to see activity, to see the beautification of that area, I appreciate that, and I'm sure the city of Tampa does as well. So thank you, staff, Elaine and Heather and Dennis and Alexis.
Thank you.
All Okay, also at this time, we're going to move forward to, we can have a motion to receive and file the submitted documents from our previous, documents and exhibits.
So moved.
I second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to receive and file submitted documents and exhibits. Thank you. All right. At this time, the time is 10:49, and we would like to conclude the Historic Preservation Commission for today. Thank you for your time. Have a beautiful day.